Hello, hello, team. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat, folks. Good to see you up bright and early. Alison, Deb, Chris, good to see you. Welcome along, folks. Hope everyone is awesome and well, wherever you are. Nice day where I am on the Gold Coast. First one in a while, actually. That rain. I wouldn't mind the rain going away. Anyway, it's interesting, hey? When we want rain, it doesn't come, and when we don't want it, it never leaves. But there you go. Hey, morning, Melinda. Good to see you. I'll do some quick intros just while things are warming up. Paul, how are you? All the way from Toowoomba. Good to see you. Jason Witten's my name. Most of you know that. And if you don't, give us a shout out in the chat. Say hello. You might be new. You might be wandering by, finding us randomly. Cool. Most likely, you're one of our mentoring or coaching clients. So welcome. If you are new to the group, new to the program, new to the positive world, then great to have you here. Let us know in the chat what you're up to, who you are, where you're from, anything that you'd be happy to share. Morning, Luke. Good morning to you. Great to see you up early too, mate. Been doing these Wealth Coffee Chats for a little while with some crazy cool crew just like you, property investors who are interested in creating wealth over the long term. There's no such thing as a get-rich-quick scheme in the world of real estate. If someone tells you there is, then they're full of shit. This thing's about, creating wealth over the medium to long term and making sure we're able to enjoy that into the future. Looks like my internet was playing funny buggers there. Anyway, hopefully you're still with me. Let me know if you are still with me. Hey, Janice. Great. Thanks for shouting out. New to the coaching, all the way from Newcastle. Awesome. Looks like my little internet-y stuff might be having a little bit of funny buggers here. So annoying, this stuff, You get yourself all set up and the internet fluctuates up and down. Anyway, I'll stop rabbiting on, Jason. Get on with the show today. But listen, today I wanted to talk about the world of borrowing and servicing. You guys know that, borrowing, lending, being able to leverage for building your property portfolio is pretty vital. If you can't lend, if leverage is difficult, then your pace of acquisition slows down, right? And we all know that, from time to time, things change. Right now, we're in one of those times where things are changing, folks. And it's not terrible. However, if you're brand new and you've never experienced this stuff before, it can feel like the end of the world. So let's have a little chat today about a few things that we probably need to be aware of, and maybe things that we could change, adjust, or do as we go along as property investors to really manage what is on the radar, what is occurring, and get some practical conversations going today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about what is happening when now and into the future when it comes to our ability to borrow and borrowing power. So unless you've been living under a rock, you've seen this. Rate hikes, the interest rate or the cash rate, so the underlying cost of money to the people who lend it to you, that cost has increased, and that now obviously gets passed on to you as a borrower. We've had a bit of a chat about this before, and you guys have heard me chat with like Andy Fenton and a few other people who are, quite clever people. They've been around the traps a few times. I've been borrowing money for 27 years. Many people on the call today probably been borrowing. We can tell stories, the back in my day stories. My first loan was 11%. My parents borrowed at 19%, blah, blah, blah. And really at the end of the day, a cash rate down here was like a ludicrous cost of money, and down there as well. And we all benefited from that. We were all pretty happy to borrow money at this point in time. We had little smiley faces here. Let's do It's a smiley face. But, over here, we've got some concerns now of what's going on with our cost of money and the adjustment that is occurring. So what can we expect? Where are we going right now when it comes to these cash rate rises? Now, what is one thing, and I celebrated the most recent announcement, even though it went up. What's one thing about, tell me in the chat, what's a good thing, an indicator of we're slowing / finding the top of these cash rate rises? Anyone kind of say? So what was the pace? What was the size of the cash rate rises to begin with? And what was the most recent one? Put that in the chat for me, because this is important to understand, even though it's still a rise. So what was the percentage that the previous 5 cash rate rises rose by? Not a great way. Hopefully you understand what the question I'm trying to ask, right? Because right now, yep, absolutely, Gary, they're getting smaller and slowing down. Now, it's a good indicator. Yep, rate is 50 basis points to 25 basis points, right? Boom. So this little indicator, a smaller rise, yep. And, let's talk about inflation, oil's coming down, all these things. There's many things I am unqualified to opinionate on, right? There's many of those machinations moving out there. One thing, though, that I have been taught by some much smarter people than myself, when you look at the bond rates, right, the future bond rates, where thousands and thousands of professional institutions talk about what they think these things might be worth. The bond rate is the price of cash into the future. They've all priced it, or the aggregated opinion is that the pricing of interest rates is going to land between 5 and 6%, right? So what does that mean? We've done this before with you guys. So, the cash rate will probably get up to between 3 and 3.5%. That's the destination at this point in time. That's the aggregated opinion of the marketplace. Now, it's not Jason's opinion. That's the aggregated opinion out there. And when we have a little look at what's going on, we go, okay, well, what does that look like? All right, so stick with me. I don't want to get too down in the weeds in this with everyone today. I want to do some calculators. So what does that look like, folks? Just quickly, if we have, if that's 2.6, this might be 2.85. The next one, that might be 3, and then we might be at 3.25, right? So that's so between 3 and 4, maybe 3 to 4, it's already slowing. So I think it might land around 3. Cash rate rises. All right. So that's what we're talking about today. Where are we now? What does it look like in the future? And what levers can we pull as property investors to help us when it comes to our ability to borrow? Here's what's going on right now. Here's a little thing, a little matrix, show you guys when it comes to borrowing power, right? So now, don't get too freaked out. You guys listening in, we can do things about this, but here's kind of the owner-occupier average when it comes to changes from 6 months ago to now, right? So for an owner-occupier, an owner-oc, okay? And why? And tell me in the chat. This is owner-occupier, so it's kind of like it's the worst case scenario from a borrowing capacity, the reduction in capacity to borrow for servicing. What's the issue? What's the kind of like the limiting factor when it comes to, borrowing power and servicing when it comes to owner occupiers? Folks, tell me that in the chat. Like what, the opposite question is, as property investors, what do we get that owner occupiers don't get when it comes to our ability to service? We get something else that helps us out, right? Put that in the chat for me. If you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I should write these questions down and formulate them a bit better rather than on the flow. But, you know, property investors get rental income where owner-occupiers do not, right? So this is kind of hard graft when it comes to owner-occupier lending, okay? So let's have a look at this. Let's have a look at, you know, boom, absolutely. We get depreciation, which is cash flow and add back, and we get rent, okay, which is a massive benefit. So if you see these interest rate rises, and the last one went from sort of 19 point, not interest rate rises, but it went up 0.25, and that in essence was approximately a little bit less than 2% change in borrowing power. Okay, so let's just do kind of this kind of range here, this 750 range, because this is kind of interesting, and we'll go to a calculator in a minute, and I'll show you what we can do about it. We've got time today. So if we have a look at, it's gone from 750 to 587. Whoa, you know, that's pretty big for owner occupiers, folks. And this is where you see. This is where you see, ladies and gents, this is where you see these opinionated, like, lunatics out there going, well, if borrowing power has dropped 20%, property prices are going to drop 20%. What absolute bullshit. Like, so tell me right now, if you're sitting there and you could borrow 700 grand, 750, you know, 9 months ago, and now you can only borrow 600, and you're an owner-occupier, what do? You're keen to buy a property. What do? What happens? You don't sit around and going, oh, well, you know, I'm going to wait for everyone to drop their price. Because the people in the 750 suburb aren't dropping their price to 600 grand, folks. That's ludicrous. That's not going to happen. All of those people have purchased those properties. That doesn't happen at all. We don't have, you know, disastrous financial challenges out there in the marketplace. What happens is, people go to another suburb. They look elsewhere. Dead right, Chris. I mean, anyway, I don't want to get off track. Yeah, and so it's interesting, Gary. What actually happens in these times is the very expensive properties, kind of this discretionary luxury property, tends to have a reduction in its average price. So it has a higher reduction in its average price. Guess what happens to the middle to bottom price ranges in the marketplace? Guess what happens to the middle to bottom, right? So the top end gets affected because of that world, and of recent times, actually, it actually hasn't been affected at all. There's been a lot of cash, a lot of people buying expensive properties, paying a lot of money. But what does happen is everyone sort of like drops down a price point, and right now we've got no supply, folks. So the competition heats up for that price point, right? Or people go, well, bugger it, I'm not going to buy. I'll just rent, which either way, for all of us, happy days. Happy days. We're not buying, you know, the $5 million houses that are more difficult to turn over. There's lower buyers. You know, we're buying, you know, the 750, you know, the 550 to 750, or we're buying the 650 to 850 range for really good quality real estate. Anyway, stay on track, Jason. All right, so here we go. Now, if that reduces, if 587 reduces, you know, 2%, which I believe it will, so that now comes to 575, you know, and if we go 575, you know, and reduce it another 2%, you know, you got 563, you know, and then reduce it another 2%, you know, it's, you know, 552. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but, you know, it's dropped. If you have a look at this, you know, 200K in buying power. That's pretty crazy, right? That's pretty crazy. So this is where, you know, these are some rough numbers, and seriously, team, there's so many pieces of moving parts in this. You know, we need to make sure we don't get carried away with that, right? So let's just quickly do something here. And, all right. Now, let's have a little look at some of this stuff, right? So I'm going to just quickly show you something. And I might continue this tomorrow, actually, because I want to dine out on this. You know what I'm going to do? Hey, part 2 tomorrow. Part 2. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do part 2 tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you some calculators and some of the things that we can work on as borrowers, right? When we can work on as lenders when it comes to adjusting our borrowing power, okay? So who's up for part 2 of this tomorrow? Let me know in the chat. Yep, for part 2 tomorrow. Dive into some details on this one. Let me know if you're keen. Give me a yes in the chat, all right? Because, you know, what are the things we can do? The easiest, most effective stuff we can do when it comes to extra borrowing is, you know, increase our income. Boom. All right. Get our income up, okay? Number 2 is, you know, reduce your expenses, which makes sense, right? Which is awesome. Thanks. Cool, team. We'll do this tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to show you no problems, Peter. It'll be recorded. You can catch up. So tomorrow we'll go through and we'll use some calculators and I'll show you guys kind of some levers that we can pull or work with your broker to work out because I don't have time today. I've got to go. Actually, what I'm doing today, this last 2 minutes, I'll just let you know what I'm doing is going to catch up with a bunch of finance brokers. I've got what are they called? Not a seminar. Anyway, where everyone gets together and hangs out in an industry. Maybe I meant to blank today. Maybe I need another coffee. A conference. Conference, Jason. Gee. Okay, well, there you go. I'm going to a conference about lending and where we're at and what's going on. So, you know, like I did the other day with short-term lending, which was quite fascinating, actually. Short-term lending. I'm going to a lending conference. And so I'm going to come back and report to you guys on what we might be able to do. So there you go. Anyway, that's it. Coffee, Wealth Coffee Chat, done and dusted for the day. Folks, join me tomorrow for part two of this borrowing and servicing conversation, networking conference. Thanks, Chris. Anyway, not enough coffees yet. Yep, there you go. The mouth is faster than the mind this morning. Maybe I need to slow it down. Anyway, folks, good to have you here. Thanks for joining me. Awesome to hang out and share some of our, time together. You guys be awesome and well. Remember, this thing's a marathon, not a sprint. The idea of property wealth is to buy well and do not bloody sell. Keep the thing. I'm telling you, you'll be sorry if you do. 9 times out of 10. Anyway, there you go. Join me tomorrow, folks, for another one. Done and dusted today. Adios, folks.